from DBE. So these are our 5-year strategy around ICT and e-learning. Now, also in terms of the way forward for us as the department and what we want to receive from the summit. This summit is really where we pull together the wealth of knowledge and experience we are having currently here. We need to pull together and to see how we can enrich this current strategy of our department. How can we make sure, leaving this venue by tomorrow, that Eastern Cape Department of Education is far richer than we are currently. Richer in the sense of sharing knowledge, richer in sharing skills. And as I draw to a closure, Mr. Mchida, I've mentioned it yesterday, and I want to mention it today again. What legacy are you going to leave behind? I indicated some of us are making sure that our pension money, or we have all these pension schemes and life policies because we want our children to be fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But the legacy that you can leave behind is a legacy in terms of landmarks, where your children can look back one day and say, this has been established by my dad. This has been established by my mom. This is my legacy. This is my inheritance. A lasting inheritance which money cannot give to you. And I really want to thank Ms. Kota and Dr. Stoffile and the team that has put this together for us. And I think they can go back and say to their children, that is my landmark. So my challenge to all of us here today, what will be your landmark? Are you going to come alongside us and say today is a day of history? It's a day that you will be part of history making in the Eastern Cape as well as in the country. So allow me to welcome you to the summit, to ask you to give us your wealth of knowledge. And as Miles Monroe is saying, the graveyard is full because people decided to die with their potential. But let us say about you, the graveyard is empty because you're going to pour in us what God has given to you. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Acting Head of Department. Another big round of applause. A writer called Robin Sharma would have asked the question, Mrs. Mastorp, it's who will cry when you die? And I think that this is exactly what you are saying. Thank you so much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, I think at least Mrs. Mastorp did well. I'm always worried when she must actually take up the podium. At least she kept to within the 15 minutes, which is why we shall just go straight to DDG Jwagati to come and answer Robin Sharma's question, who will cry when you die? Skomo, can you give him a very big round of applause? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Luther, there's something that you wanted me to do.
Thank you, Program Director, Mr. Mchida, Honorable MEC, I nearly said Honorable HOD, our esteemed HOD, Mrs. Mastorp, our honored guests who have answered the call that are with us here today, to committees who have attended. I also see a lot of our learners, our school principals, teachers, everybody's in here. Also, a special word of gratitude to our district directors. Siyanibona Kade, they are all in here. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. I just wanted to load this presentation so that you can see what I'm talking about. Sorry. Just give me a second. That's it. They are changing my presentation into a tech-savvy presentation. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, let me then run with the ball. You can all see it from there. And what I wanted to do, colleagues, is to share with you the strategic framework. It's not appearing. But it did appear. No, Congress, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to share with the House the key components of our strategy going forward. And as you are all aware, the road that we have traveled as a department, as Ms. Kota was indicating and the HOD confirming, when we started this project almost from 2016, we were really looking at how do we stabilize the IT environment in our schools and how do we improve better on integration of e-learning solutions to the schools. And what we've done is to develop a framework that is going to allow us to do that over time. Firstly, is to agree on the institutionalization of the function within the department, what you might call the functions and the structure that we wanted to house in the department. Number two, then agree on a package of performance objectives that will allow us to scope and scale the implementation. And then thirdly, agree on parameters of implementation, what you might call strategy. And we developed the first 5-year strategy. We're now into our second 5-year strategy of e-learning. Then out of that, we then had to agree on what you might call strategic flagships of the department. What are these flagships that we wanted to showcase in the process of implementing our e-learning? We have then developed an M&E framework to look at implementation considerations, particularly the design and implementation evaluation, but also we have a mid-term review just to look at where things are we moving, are we making progress? And then at the end of that period, we have what we call summative evaluation. Are we making an impact? Where are we? So that's almost the kind of framework over the period of traveling that we did. Now in the department, e-learning is located in a branch called curriculum. I'm just giving you an overview of the environment in which e-learning is institutionalized in the department. You have a branch called curriculum, and in curriculum, we are managing the planning and the delivery of curriculum in schools. And the core programs that drive that branch is early childhood development, it's general education and training, it's further education and training, it's e-learning, then teacher development and assessment and examinations. We then have support systems to the schooling system to mitigate the impact of any other matter that is outside teaching and learning. Integrated school health. We work in collaboration with other departments in terms of managing issues of school health. We also have to make sure that these kids are fed through the National School Nutrition Program, which is part of the integration. And then we deal with a lot of enrichment programs, music, sport, So we also provide access to scholar transport, access to hostels. So that's a supporting environment. But at the core of it is teaching and learning. So we are all at the service of a very black man in the department called Mr. Whitey, Mr. Mchita next to me. So he's the DDG responsible for all of our schools. So all of these programs that we do must find solace in a school environment that is conducive for teaching and learning. And Mr. Mchita is driving all of that. Our schools, our districts, our circuit offices. So the whole of institutional operations is what we are supporting as a department. So e-learning is here to support that environment. Now, if you look at the entirety of it, is that we're always supported from a corporate point of view by our corporate branch, which is your HRA, HRD. So that's sort of the framework I wanted to talk to. Now let's come to the core of our strategy and the outlook of that strategy. At the expense, when I look of bastardizing the framework, I've just decided to go on a sort of a graphic illustrative template that will allow us cognitively to get a sense of what we're talking about. There are 4 strands, colleagues, that we're managing. Now, the first strand of this is on my bottom right. It's mobilizing support for ICT integration, and we're looking at engaging all directorates in the department and mobilizing all available resources in the department to produce a commendable ICT program. Then number 2, we're looking at capacity of our schools to manage, integrate and implement e-learning within the school environment by focusing on teacher development, pre-service as well as in-service training. So those are the key strengths that we're looking at. And then thirdly, we're looking at provisioning of resources. Now, if you look at provisioning of resources, the biggest mistake, colleagues, that we get from people most of the time is that they think that we're working for Pick and Pay. They will come and say, we are selling laptops, we are selling Chromebooks. And I'm saying, our business is not about buying gadgets. Our business is about conceptualizing a functional e-learning framework for a school environment. Now, if you give me a business model, then I can engage because you have a chase theory. But if you sell me a laptop, you sell me a hardware, they chase you everywhere. We have connectivity, and I'm not about that. I'm about the package. And here, when we talk about provisioning of resourcing, it's really about how we package e-learning from point of view of school functionality. So that's the third strand. Then the 4th strand is the digital content, both online and offline. And I should think, colleagues, you will all agree with us. I should think the world is gallo and is splendid with a number of these resources available. It's the capacity and the ability of us as government to engage in that space. Colleagues, education is an international phenomenon. It's not about Eastern Cape in a little funny corner of the map of South Africa. It's so the standards somewhere else, they have developed and they are gone. You can go to Singapore, you can go to Japan, you will find that somehow we are left behind. WMSA will tell you, we always argue about the correlations in development. You really can't talk about advancing the schooling system without advancing, social development, infrastructure development in the country. And this is where the big issue is in terms of digitalization. We need to move with speed, otherwise we're being left behind. And fifthly, colleagues, is research, innovation, and partnerships. Now, if you look at, this is one area that public service is very poor in, the research capacity of public service, to engage with new information. And as we called everybody, and we, in terms of planning as a branch, we said, look, let's try and involve a widespread of colleagues who are active in these areas so that we can source ideas, we can engage on how these mean and what they mean to us as we go forward. So research is one of those. As a result, we are trying to make sure that our universities, all the 4 universities, big universities in the Eastern Cape, are part and parcel of our talk, they are part and parcel of our discussion, so that we have an integrated framework. And then lastly, colleagues, it's monitoring and support just to make sure that when we deploy resources to schools, they work, they are used optimally. We once visited one of the schools in one of the townships, a very beautiful school, and we had a history that the school had been supported with laboratory equipment, e-learning material, tablets, laptops, and when we got in there, lo and behold, I should think this has to do with quality of leadership. We could sense as we were getting in that, hey, this is chaos. And our main concern was whether the resources are being utilized. We got in, principal, how are you? I'm okay. Can you just showcase us how you integrate, all of these resources that have been deployed? He says, hey, I had to lock them up because, no, these are not meant to be locked away. They are meant to be utilized. So part of monitoring is just to make sure if these resources are used optimally. Colleagues, that's almost the framework of the strategy. I don't want to waste Mr. Mkita's time. It's just to give you a sense of where can we engage each other? Where can we engage the Eastern Cape in terms of this framework? And what can we do to support one another going forward? Now, these are almost what we might call critical projects, as they almost my penultimate slide of what we do. Yesterday, colleagues, in fact, let me start with digital libraries. As you all know, we're trying to shift away from the concept of brick and mortar in terms of library into an e-learning library or digital library, where we can load information and children can access that information using their cell phone. I mean, if you look at the rate of cell phone penetration in South Africa, it's one of the highest. And I'm talking about the poor of the poorest communities. So if we can't exploit, that leverage, then forget about it. And this is where we're trying to get into. We're trying, colleagues, to work with municipalities on accessing libraries. But I don't think they have a concept. I saw many libraries that were, just newly built here around this township called Ndanzana, in a zone called Zone 14. There's a library that was launched by the presidents with fun and fair, and I went past there the other day. Hey, it's outgrown with grass and everything, and and I was so worried. Now, you talk about a very interesting concept, digital library, where you can deploy resources just to look at face-to-face physical library and e-learning libraries. Then, colleagues, the most important component is what HOD was talking about. We are developing the broadcasting capacity of the department. So yesterday, we were showcasing a studio that we built and that we were launching yesterday. And part of that studio is to take education directly to kids. And that's why we are looking at these projects. So these are almost your strategic projects. Now, this is the solution that we've put up in terms of your e-library resources, and the basic, equipment that you need in there is a 2-in-1 laptop or Chromebooks that we have, come to acquire, and all of these other gadgets. I don't want to waste much of your time, but the key important ingredients is the infrastructure that you need as well as connectivity, just to access it. Last but not least, Ms. Mkita, it's the flagship of the broadcast. This is the architectural design of the studio, and those of you who were watching news from ENCA yesterday, the MEC was talking from that studio, and that is the sort of our design that we had. So these are the connectivity issues that we're looking at. Thank you, Judah. The perfect environment that we are looking at is the issue of the smart classroom, strong connectivity, collaboration, functional learning management systems, and that's where we're looking at going forward. I want to thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Program Director, for your time.
Thank you so much, DDG Juagadi. You also have managed to save us some time. Can we give DDG Juagadi another big round of applause? Indeed, the issue is ensuring that we have stable institutions through the use of ICTs. And thank you once again for the good work that the branch is doing. I have been advised that the cluster chief directors have joined us, and some other district directors were not here when we started. The CES's curriculum, I take it that from all our 12 districts, are also here, and the e-learning advisors are also now part of us. Then Imbizo, who is our partner, and that the South African Democratic Teachers Union, it is also confirmed they are now amongst ourselves. Thank you so much to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. We shall now move to our next speaker from Gauteng Department of Education, the Chief Director responsible for School Technology Support Services, Mr. Muhorosi. Can I get an indication? Can you just encourage Mr. Muhorosi as he is taking up the podium? Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Program Director. I'm glad that you did not attempt to pronounce my name. The slaughter of my surname was sufficient. I could not stand here with both my name and surname having been slaughtered. Least of all, tall as I am. So I would have had to appeal to the MEC to protect me. Whilst we're waiting for the presentation to load, Program Director, there are one or two things that I think we need to state. You know, there's a temptation when you are invited into an event coming from outside that you are bringing a lot of wisdom that does not already reside in the people that have invited you. And I want to squash that temptation that we don't have all the wisdom in the space that we operate, but we are here to share our experience. We are here to share with you the journey that we have traversed as a province. So lower your expectations of the presentation so that we're at the same level, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I think as a sector we need to start doing two things. The first thing is to put e-learning at the center of education. That time has passed. We are in a situation where, or at least an environment where thanks. I think we need to put education at the core of, e-learning at the core of our education. I'm saying this because couple of years ago, and probably more than a couple, the King 4 Commission put ICT at the center of operations in a corporate environment. And I think as public sector, I think as government, we need to start going along with what the King Commission has put forth. So that's the second thing that I wanted to raise. The last thing is as follows, DDG. I think we need to resolve the misuse of, or the interchange or interplay between ICT and e-learning, so that we are clear in terms of what is it that we're talking about. When we talk of ICT strategy, are we talking of the ICT strategy or are we talking about the e-learning strategy? So that we do not miss each other in the nomenclature. The second last thing that we need to do is to also resolve the conversation between what is e-learning versus what is online learning. So that the interventions that we direct to our classrooms are well defined and positioned to respond to the issues that they need to. The last one is around computer-based teaching and or learning versus e-learning itself. So that when a learner is sitting in front of a laptop or a tablet, we do not term that as an e-learning intervention. It could be if that tablet is linked to a connectivity. It could be when there is pedagogy that supports that activity. So we need to resolve these questions as we go along. Now we were requested to come here and do a presentation. Like I said, we're not bringing new wisdom or wisdom as it were, but we're just going to share the journey that we traveled as a province over the last 12 years, if I'm right. This is the content that we will cover. What we had to do was to read the room. And we had to read a bigger room than what we thought that room was. This meant that we needed to make an assessment as to where are we as a province insofar as all the EdTech interventions that preceded the fifth administration. One of the things that we had to contend with was an archaic approach to the rollout and implementation of e-learning and the provisioning of education technology resources in our schools. And I think, I hope our network operators are not in here at Ntatitlaban. Or I shouldn't say this, Premier. Premier will protect me. What we are seeing currently is that network operators, and I'm saying this very guardedly, they are doing a disservice to our learners, because they bring in 25 laptops into a room, Dr. Stoffel, right? They bring 25 laptops into a room, and they paint that room black. Let's call it black, right? But what goes into those classrooms with the machinery that they put in is not helpful to our learners. So it confines their learning into that small room that they would have painted black. Our conceptualization of e-learning, our conceptualization of EdTech solution goes far beyond what the network operators provide us. So I think it's a conversation that we need to have as a sector. And these interventions that we receive on behalf of our learners, are they helpful, Sislut? So we had to do that analysis. Can somebody keep me honest with time? We had to do that analysis before we went into this thing. One of the disservices that we had to contend with was this thing called a handover. Right? So we appoint a company to come, a service provider to come and do these things for us. 7 years down the line, we are now ready to move over to the next phase, and we say, okay, right, can we have a handover report? They give you a CD-ROM, a disk. Right? Now, the problem is, what do you do with this one CD covering about 2,300 schools in Gauteng? It's not helpful. You're not going to be able to process this data in the manner in which you want to do it. And then lastly, we at that time, we were contending with a huge textbook sack. But what is it that we were solving for as a province? At that time in 2014, there was a mass exodus that preceded the 2014 elections. There was a mass exodus of learners out of township education, or rather out of township schools, who went to subsidized and non-subsidized independent schools. So these schools, you'll find them in flats, you find them in some houses somewhere in town, and they were appealing to our learners at that time. But we also were contending with a general poor state of infrastructure in our province, in our schools. Lastly, the gap between the performance of former Model C schools and our public ordinary schools was huge in terms of performance. So we had to come with strategies to arrest that gap that we were finding. So up front, we needed, importantly, political leadership adoption, so that this thing does not become a project of some mukhorosi sitting at the corner, but it becomes a political decision in the province. That led to the departmental strategy shift that accommodated the e-learning, but importantly, it led to a very important decision in the province, an ECDoE decision supporting modernization in the classrooms. So not only did we have a departmental strategy, but we had a strategy that was supported by the leadership of the province in terms of the provincial cabinet. This therefore meant that we had almost ample resources that were given to the department to roll out the type of infrastructure that we wanted. MEC, but ample budget. Now, so what followed that was that we had to define the type of intervention that we would need to address the type of problems that we had. So we consolidated all of our ICT projects that were in existence at the time in the province. But importantly, at the core of what we were doing was to make sure that we improve learner outcomes, right? Third, because of the state of the infrastructure in our public schools, we needed to change the face of public schooling, because we wanted to attract these learners back into our schools. I had the HOD talking about rationalization of schools. The bulk of the schools that we were sitting with at the time in townships were either underutilized, closed, or the infrastructure was bad. So we needed an intervention that would deal with these things. And then the HOD also spoke about fourth industrial revolution. We wanted to prepare our learners for that. So we had to come up with a delivery framework that has got 4 key enablers. The first one, as you would know, are e-lessons. I will not go much into that, but effectively it was the digitization of the usual manner of teaching into a digital form. The second enabler was provisioning of devices into the classroom. Now the DDG is right. We have our friends who come and throw devices at us with the hope that we will buy them. We're not going to buy them if they come empty. We want them packaged with content. We want them useful to the learners when we give them. But the provision of these devices, we also implemented what we called bring your own device model. where we allow learners to, those that we had not as yet reached, because remember our strategy started from grade 12 going down to grade 8. So those that we had not reached at the time, we allowed them to bring their own devices and we gave them access to our content platform. The third one was around training, teacher development, and the last one really dealt with learner evaluation. Okay. Yeah. So these are the 6 pillars that underpinned the framework. I will not go into them. I touched on them as I was talking. Now, we had to quickly settle on a few things that were going to allow us to drive our strategy. The first one was a development of an e-learning strategy. And we were self-correcting as we were going, MEC. We went into this program without an e-learning strategy per se, but we knew what we wanted to achieve. So what followed the rollout was really a conversation about what is this thing that we're trying to do as a province. So we then went in and developed an e-learning strategy, really with clearly defined objectives that we wanted to achieve, settling on a delivery mode that we wanted inside the classroom. Now, I got shocked when I went into a classroom. When I went to high school, I was used to me sitting down and the teacher being at the front of the classroom. But you go to a classroom now, a teacher is all over the classroom roving around because technology has enabled them to interact with learners at any point in time. And then we settled on the digitalization journey and the choice of subjects that we were going to start with, because we were not going to afford to go to each and every single one of them. Importantly, the implementation mode that dealt with the supply chain issues. Because we thought that we understood the terrain, we sat down and said, what are the available technologies that are linked to this thing that we want to do? So that we can pick and choose those that are available and see that if they are going to be helpful in our environment. The DGSO spoke here earlier on that there's a lot of education technology solutions that are out there, but we had to pick the one that was specific and relevant to ourselves. And then make an assessment on the human resource capacity that we have, because educators are the bedrock of the system. I mean, just a quick point, between 2014 and 2017, I think the system lost about close to 15% of educators in Gauteng. Right? Okay, at the time there was an issue of early retirement and so forth, so but some of them in their exit interviews indicated a fear of this thing that we were trying to do. I'm not saying that educators, hello, don't go, please. But they indicated a fear, and partially the department was to 2024 still be providing learners with 2D content. We can't. E-books can't still be coming through as PDF and what have you. We cannot. We need interactive content in our classrooms. So that's a battle that we are having with content developers, publishers, that going forward, we don't want this 2D content. We don't want it. So if you are bringing 2D content, go back, reformat it, bring it back as interactive. Then we'll have a conversation, because we need to blow the mind of learners. We must capture their imagination. I apologize. Just a couple of slides and then I'm ending. And then the issue around stakeholders. We need to identify the stakeholders. Who is it that is going to be useful to our program and work with them? Not just take anybody that say they can, but we needed to do an identification and really evaluate their contribution into this program. Segregate these stakeholders into the political and technical. And by political, I mean those that have got decision-making powers. Technical are the techies ourselves and technocrats. So this is the framework that we came up with in terms of engagement with our elders. And then lastly, issues around M&E, we are all of fair with us. Just want to spend a minute or two on this slide. There were blind spots that we had, right? Because we will not have determined everything in advance. The first one was the repair costs related to the devices that we give to learners. In Gauteng, we spend about between 20 and 25% of our budget on repairs. 20 and 25% of our budget on repairs. This year alone, we are hitting 160,000 devices that we have distributed. Now, all of these devices must come back at the end of the academic year. We must assess them if they are still functional. If they are not, we must send them for repairs. We must update the content. Some of these devices get lost. But the costs related to repairs are astronomical. We try to cap them by saying the lifespan of a device will be 3 years. So instead of starting at grade 12, we are now saying, let's start at grade 8. Let the learner go through, same learner, same device, all the way up to matric, with a view to try and cap some of these costs. It was a huge battle, but we are winning that battle. And then Tate Thabane is here, the national catalog e-books. Let's resolve that in Tate Thabane. But this was one of the blind spots that we had. Right? We have developed our own, as a province, a catalog for e-books. We are now developing a catalog for multimedia content. So that when people say we've got content, or this is the content that we want. So go and develop these things, all right? And then escalating content costs for obvious reasons, those that are in this space, they charge. But then the impact on the organizational structure, the HR element. When we started, I think that the unit was probably about 4 people that were driving the program. It has increased. It's now a chief directorate, but we are still not enough in there to do these things. Then there are costs related to connectivity that we spoke about, and then system development and system development requirements and related costs. We'll not spend too much time on the lessons learned, but just a few. When we started rolling out the program, we did not think that, well, I'm sure we thought that we would be here, but we did not really comprehend what 2024 would represent in terms of the program. So there were issues related to infrastructure, ICT infrastructure change. We are now moving from physical hosting of servers onto the cloud. We did not think about these things. We did not think about the technology refresh, right? Right. This year is it's the first time that we will be refreshing the LED boards that we have in our classrooms, and we're talking about just under 5,000 devices that we need to refresh because they've long gone out of warranty. Some of them are non-functional. Some of the user experience has degraded. So we're doing a device refresh in the current year. This is my last slide. This is our favorite slide. If you look at that picture tells you where we are. This is a snapshot of what the program is in Gauteng currently. This is a snapshot that was taken in June. In terms of the number of schools that we have covered, the number of classrooms that we have touched, the number of interactive boards that we have installed in schools, teachers that have got laptops, learner devices, and so on and so forth. So this is a snapshot that we took in June. It would have changed because we've already started the device refresh program. Program Director, I apologize for taking time. Thank you.
Let's give the Gauteng colleague another big round of applause. Now, I'm very careful this time because I do not want to slaughter this name again, which is why I'm just saying the Gauteng colleague. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, you'll agree with me that there's lots of very valuable information that comes from this presentation. I'm not even sure MEC listening to this, the kind of planning that has actually gone to this, but forget about Chief Directorate for now. The kind of planning, financial injection by the big minds that have actually gone intentionally into getting Gauteng where they are now. Thank you so much, colleague, for sharing such valuable information with us. Can you just give him another big round of... You may agree with me that we are not a very lucky province. We are not very lucky. Because for over these years, we have been struggling to provide textbooks and books to our schools because of all the problems that we had. But in the past 2 years, just as we think that we are now mastering it with our publishers, there comes the GD, the Gauteng colleague, to say he does not even want to share some of the thing in the presence of our good publishers. So we're not very lucky, because now we must actually consider shifting from that. But thank you so much, colleagues. Let me apologize. We shall have just to move one step back in terms of the program. Before the Gauteng colleague, we should have taken number 6, who is now going to be Mr. Andile Stoffile, as I invite you, sir, who is representing Imbizo to come and take that item number 6. Can you welcome him with a round of applause? Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Program Director. In the interest of time, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Molweni, Dumelang, Sanbonan, Absheng, Goeiemorgen, Dimashironi. I think we sometimes, a problem yethu apha ephondweni, we forget that we are part of a global village. And we think that because we are the home of legends, that everything happens here and is centralized around here, and we forget that we live in a global village. So we must be able to represent as the province, be able to represent the province at a national level and at a global level. Again, I say to you, good morning. My name is Andile Stofile. Let me just acknowledge the Honorable MEC. And in the spirit of EGNU, let me just say all protocol observed. I don't want to exclude anyone, and EGNU is inclusive. So I want to make sure that I'm inclusive of everyone and I don't leave anyone behind. Do not be confused. Ngusithathu ngundebe ngkhopho inkomo zibomvu zingamnyama ziyaxhelwa thina ke MEC, while other people are fighting for the expropriation of land without compensation, thina we fight for yabona khona ndawo uthi inkomo ezibomvu zingamnyama ziyaxhelwa. Now we are going to the French. We want a brand called Red Bull. We want to expropriate lanto lena ithi Red Bull, yabona, because inkomo ezibomvu meaning Red Bull, it belongs to our ancestors. So sithi ke abo Red Bull inkomo ezibomvu. Mr. Mfuleni has asked me on behalf of the Imbizo group just to come and say a couple of words. So Mnaki, I must declare and be quite upfront to declare that I'm permanently based in Botswana. And I've been deployed in Botswana for the following reasons. The first one is to, as Pan-Africanists, is how are we able to, against the aspirations, for an example, of Agenda 2063, be able to assist countries to get to those aspirations? That's number one. Number two is, You'd be quite surprised at the lessons and how advanced MEC countries like Botswana are in terms of the journey that Ipondo is trying to do. And hence we've got the chairman of Empire Synergy. I mean, I was deployed there. We've got the chairman of Empire Synergy who are working part and parcel with government to make sure that which we are trying to do up at Pondweni, they've already done and quite far advanced. And so he'll be speaking at a later stage around that. But thirdly is also to say that part of my deployment mandate is how do you then create platforms for collaboration so that it's not just an Eastern Cape thing or a Gauteng thing, but we create platforms which are pan-African based. So for an example, one of the things that we are clear and we want to do is we want to be able to have this summit. Next year, we want to be able to have it at Gaborone. Why Gaborone? Because a lot of people don't even know that Gaborone is the house or the home or where ECDoE is based. A lot of us don't know that. So we need to be where the centers of power are, where the decisions are about our continent. And so, these are the things which I'm them driving. And I'm very proud to be part of Imbizo Group because at the end of the day is that while we are an Eastern Cape organization, based on organization, we are clear about everything that we do. We have to be gearing towards addressing the triple challenges which we face as Ipondo, right? Yes, we might bring speakers and have different platforms, but because at the end of the day is we must be very clear, and the clarity is very important, that before we are Department of Education, before we are this, we are that, we are citizens first. And if we do not address the issues that we face, starting with education, that child who we leave behind because we are solving for the wrong thing. I think the previous speaker or speakers were speaking about, for an example, what are we solving for? Are we clear what we are solving for? If we're solving for the wrong things, we're going to be buying laptops, and we're not going to be solving the education problem, as an example. Are we solving for the right thing? And so it's I think that becomes important, and it's quite exciting for me that this platform, and I'm very happy that it's being driven by the Department of Education, because if it's being driven by the private sector, here's what's going to happen is that the honest conversations that need to happen are not going to be able to happen. Whereas if it's driven by the sector on its own and driven by Department of Education, the honest conversations whereby, say, you are speaking about, the challenges around publishing and otherwise, we're able to have and deliberate on those conversations so that we're addressing and we are solving for the right issues. For too long, and this is why the output of what we have from an education and other points of view that we have at the moment, the outputs are not what we want because we are not solving for the right things. This is the simple reality. We are not asking the right questions. We need to be able to ask the right questions so that we're able to solve for the right things. So we're very proud that the department is really driving, is driving this conversation. And us as the private sector, us as those, citizens which have got a vested interest to make sure that we're able to catapult Ipondo and the country at large, we come in as a support structure, not the drivers. That's very, very important. Now, the other thing I just want to reflect on, so last year we had or previously we had the 4th annual e-learning, it was in 2019, not last year, the resolutions. There were a couple of resolutions, and it's important to be able to reflect on those because in these conversations that we are having, to prevent us from being a talk shop, we need to reflect and say, have we achieved the resolutions that we had set out? Let me just, because I'm appreciative of the fact that some of the colleagues which are here perhaps were not there the last time. So the first resolution was that the learner must be the priority. Now, I'm very happy, and as we always do, we always make sure uba abantwana besikolo are here because nothing about the learner without the learner. Again, we need to be able to solve for the right things. How can we solve for the right things if we are solving the learner issue, but the learners are not here to be able to listen and influence the conversation? That was number one. Resolution number 2 was around technology must not replace the teacher, but technology must enhance learning and teaching. That is a fact. Now, we spoke about, again, say, you know, the Gauteng, where you had an exodus of teachers. Again, it's that fear that technology is here to replace us, because we always, you know, AI is going to replace us as teachers, all of these things. But in fact, the change management, if done correctly, teachers then realize that actually this is to enhance the learner experience. It's also to enhance their job and make their job easier. So that was number 2. Number 3 was saying that the classroom digital divide between rural, township, and suburban learners must be closed through private sector support and initiatives by government, such as, or with entities such as USASA and Centec and other ones. The other resolution was that the telecommunications operators, they must continue to open more learning material and make them zero-rated to reduce the cost of data for learners. Now, I must put this into context, because remember that this was 2019. So this was, you know, of course, a lot of work has been done by the telcos. We must acknowledge that. A lot of work was done by the telcos, especially during the COVID period, to be able to zero-rate content. So these resolutions, I must put that into context, that, you know, they were done then. The teacher laptop rollout, you know, must be accompanied by teacher training on the laptop and the use of these laptops and other devices. The other resolution was that the cyberspace risk, it remains real, and learners must be cautioned on the risk of the internet. The other one was that coding is an important project in schools to prepare and guide learners on analytical skills and preparing them for skills on the new economy, which is driven by the 4IR. So those are that's just a reflection on the 2019 resolution. And I must also mention, it would be amiss of me not to mention that, you know, we need to, you know, just salute and support the vision of the MEC at the time, or MEC Makapula, and appreciate the groundwork which he had done to promote mathematics and science, you know, as part of the e-learning system. And so in closing then, let me say this, say that forward with a pass mark ka 85% in 2024, forward. Phambili ngo 85% phambili. Phambili ngo 85% phambili. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stoffile. You can give him another round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Colleagues, I think that Mr. Tlhabane from DBE, are you ready, sir? Please, let's welcome Mr. Tlhabane to come forward and share the DBE priorities on e-learning. Thank you so much, Mr. Tlhabane. Okay, thank you so much, sir.
DDG and Program Director, thank you very much for the opportunity. Let me also greet the Honorable MEC and our HOD and our DDGs who are here today. Program Director, allow me to make two comments quickly before I get on to what I have prepared on the PowerPoint. In 1892, the world moved from what was called horsepower to what was called the gasoline power, where the nature of work was changing, and when farmers were using oxen to plow the land and to produce the food that the people were eating. And a small invention was made called a tractor. The introduction of a tractor revolutionized food production across the world. Farmers were at the tipping point of making a decision whether they stay with what they know, which was using oxen, or to transform to this new foreign thing that was presented to them. I think you'd agree with me that those who resisted the change at the time were left behind. And that those who embraced the change of this foreign automotive called a tractor managed to then expand on their food production, tilting the soil in a new way and feeding the nation. And you can imagine everybody who resisted the change, what happened to them. They were left behind. By the time they woke up, it was too late. The second point I wish to make is an tech expert visited a school where DDG, the principals, had logged the technology inside of the locker rooms and were resisting this change that government was trying to expose them to. An tech expert asked the teacher who was insisting on using the blackboard, asked a very simple question: who invented the blackboard? The teacher could not answer, and he turned to the learners and said, who invented the blackboard? And he picked one of the learners, and the learner gave the right answer and said it was invented by James Pillens. I don't know how many of you know in here who have used blackboards before. The teacher was shocked because the EdTech confirmed that that was the right answer. And he wanted to know from the learners, after the EdTech expert left, and say, how did you get that right? And they say, we Googled. They didn't know before, but they knew the power of technology, and they went and Googled, and technology gave them an answer. Because there is a benefit and the power of technology that it will be able to give you answers that otherwise would have taken days to go and look for. The last comment that I wish to make is that the blackboard, which was invented in 1801, and the tractor that was invented in 1892, teaching remains to be the only profession where if somebody who died in 1892 when the tractor was invented, or in 1801 when the blackboard was invented, if they miraculously wake up from the grave and come back to life like Lazarus, and they go and look for a job, they will still find it, and they will be able to practice. Because they will still find us with the chalk and duster in hand. It is the only profession. A doctor who died 50 years ago, if they wake up, they must go for retraining because the theaters have changed. You can't operate a patient unless you have been orientated to the technologies that are there. So it's important that we need to transform the space that we are working in, which is the education space. Colleagues, I will try to move as fast as possible, and that is a presentation outline. I will not spend time on it. But I would like to give some quick history on the journey that we have traveled as a country, because some may give an impression that these conversations that we are having are new, when they're actually very old. Way back in 1997, we developed the white paper. We were recognizing the transformative role that ICT had to play in education, as I indicated in my opening remarks. In 2001, we developed an ICT in education strategy. It aimed at ensuring that we leverage on ICT advancements. 2004, the white paper on education was developed, and this had a vision of widespread ICT access and confident digital users, both learners and teachers. And that by 2013, the vision was that every learner in this country was going to be digitally literate, and teachers would be using technology to integrate into the classrooms. We have, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, made some advancements as a country. And as early as 2000, there were very big projects that recognized the power of technology. Initiatives like the Kanya project that was implemented in the Western Cape, and the Gauteng Online that was implemented in Gauteng. And on the African stage, NEPAD was driving the ICT penetration, not only in other aspects of our lives, but as well as in education itself. And that many countries embrace this. In the east of Africa, countries like Kenya and Rwanda embraced technology, and they made huge progress in terms of ICT deployment, e-learning, and everything that has to do with digital transformation. And in the west of Africa, countries like Senegal and Ghana were also galloping, and at the southern tip of Africa, South Africa and Botswana, as it was indicated earlier on, are some of the countries that embraced these changes, and that Africa was on the move. Colleagues, in 2015, the president convened a huge gathering called Operation Pakisa, where some of you who are seated in here gathered there, and that we had to develop a new roadmap as a country of acknowledging the role that ICTs and e-learning and e-education had to play in transforming the delivery of education, as well as improving the learning outcomes using technology as an enabler. The president has as well, on a number of occasions, through the SONAS and at provincial level, the premiers have spoken. We are not short of political willingness in this country, because our politicians have embraced the role that technology has to play. Colleagues, we are at a point where provinces have been calling for us, after coming out of Operation Pakisa, and that we had developed implementation plans, that it's important that we develop an e-education strategy, because that was the missing piece in our puzzle. And that we are at a point, as announced earlier on, of developing an e-education strategy, and I'm with my team here from DBE, and that will be engaging with a wide range of stakeholders on Thursday, to ensure that we get inputs into this strategy from each of our 9 provinces, from the role players that are in this space, particularly in those provinces. And that is a roadmap with that vision, starting with a vision, and our vision remains the same, that our learners, including in Zulu and in Lisikisiki, must have access to digital technology, and they must benefit from it, and that it must assist them to improve their learning performance. That our teachers, as practitioners in the 21st century, must be assisted to integrate ICTs into their teaching practices. I do not take the story that says teachers are afraid of technology. If in the banking space, those of you who are here, I can see many of the faces here used to have the bank books, where you went to the bank and you deposited your money, and there was that stamp that was put on it, and that the very same people who are tellers, who are assisting us, operating in a digital space in the banking sector, they come from the same villages, they come from the same townships as our teachers. They are neighbors, they are family members. If they could embrace it in the banking space, why are we saying teachers are afraid of it? I don't accept that story. Our teachers are human beings like tellers, and that they can be able, if supported appropriately, to be able to use technology. Nobody taught them how to use smartphones. There was no workshop for smartphones. They learned on the way, and every teacher has a smartphone, and they know how to operate that smartphone with no workshop, no training. The only thing is that the technology that is deployed, like Mr. Mohoros indicated, it must be designed in such a way that it can be used. It must be designed with the end user in mind, and that the user experience must make it easy for this person without being pushed to adopt this technology. So those who are designing these solutions must have the end user in mind, have the teacher in mind, have the learner in mind, have the administrator in mind as we transform how we manage our administrations. There's a vision, and we end up with our outputs out there. Colleagues, the strategic outcomes are listed there. In the interest of time, I will not go through all of them, but they speak to issues of universal access, digital literacy, quality education, because it is about education. These are just resources that we must use to promote and provide quality education. System efficiency, governance framework, digital citizenship, and meaning our children must be able to use technology responsibly, and our teachers must be able to use technology responsibly. They must not be found getting into undesirable sites using the technologies that have been provided to them, and that they enjoy the sites that we don't want them to be using these technologies for. They be learners or they be teachers. It's important that technology must be used responsibly. Colleagues, the message, and I'm happy that the speaker that came before me and those who came before him indicated about the centrality of the teacher, that the teacher remains to be the differentiator. Technology is not here to move towards a world-class digitalized education in our countries. It's about making life easier, lighter. Children who carry those 55 books in that school bag, bending their back, that we need to come to a point where through a smart gadget, children are going to have all this. And Mr. Mohoros indicated that we need to finalize this e-catalog thing, because it is the one that is going to make it possible for us to move to this type of a future where children are having gadgets and they are able to access all digital content on their gadgets. But from sound educational perspective, we must be understood. We are not saying we are getting rid of textbooks. That's not what we are saying. The hard books, and replacing them only with digital versions of those books. But we are saying it is that middle ground. Why? Why? It makes educational sound. People learn differently. If even here in this e-learning summit, there are people who are on their gadgets making notes. There are people who are having notepads and they're still writing. Why? Because we are wired differently. There's nothing wrong. Some people make sense of what they are assimilating when they use their motor skills. When they write, that is when they are able to make sense. There are those who are using gadgets. It doesn't mean those who are using gadgets are smarter than those who are writing. It doesn't mean that. In conclusion, Chairperson, When the television was invented, I'm a scientist, so I like inventions. When television was invented, the newspaper houses were afraid that they were going to go under. Because all of a sudden, if you want to know what happened during the day, you don't have to take a paper and read it. There is this box that you buy, and the owners of this television station, they employ some pretty lady or a handsome young man who sits behind the camera and tell you what happened during the day. That the MEC was launching a studio, that there is an e-learning summit taking place in East London, in the Eastern Cape. Somebody would tell people who are not here and tell them what happened during the day. So you don't have to read because somebody narrates to you. And the pictures are not just static on a paper, but they are live. They interview the MEC, they interview the HOD, they interview the organizers, they interview some of the participants. And you hear their voices. Somebody's not just quoting them on paper. That's amazing. But there are men and women in here. Every Sunday they drive to the garage to get a copy of their Sunday Times. And they sit on their sofa and they read what happened during the week or what happened during the day. Over 100 years later, newspapers are still here. Why? Because people assimilate knowledge differently. There's a danger, Mr. Mkhorosi. If we just focus on those who prefer to assimilate knowledge on digital platforms, and we try to push everybody to assimilate knowledge that way, we are going to lose those learners who prefer to open a textbook and study. If we say we're only providing textbooks, this is a waste of money to deliver gadgets because they are going to be stolen. We are missing out on children who would have done very well, DDG, if they were given technology. We need to take care of both type of children. It is educationally sound to have both side by side. Even advanced countries like Germany and the USA and Italy are still having the two existing side by side, because you need to take care of both type of people, those who prefer the traditional way and those who prefer the digital way. We no one left behind. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Siyabulela kakhulu Mr. Hlabane. Can you just give for Mr. Hlabane another big round of applause? Thank you so much. And also for allaying fears that when you talk e-learning, it means necessarily you are displacing some other forms of learning. I think that has been clearly stated. Ladies and gentlemen, there are just some slight changes that we have to consider in our program. Firstly, because we are expecting the MEC to address us now, but unfortunately, who has just been whisked away by media, starting at 11:15, so he is not immediately available. And the Honorable Minister for Education will not be joining us today for the summit, which then means that we may have to consider breaking at this point for tea, which I want to propose that we take 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You see, I'm only the mouthpiece of Unatsika, Mrs. Skoda. So some of these things that I say painfully are not necessarily coming from me, because she's sitting right in front of me. So we shall break for 15 minutes, and when we come back, we shall take the Honorable MEC, and then we shall make announcement in terms of how do we move to panel discussions at that point in time. Yes, so our 15 minutes will take us to, the time now is 11:20. So can we all then again converge here? What time? Sis Luto, what time will be 15 minutes? Mr. It will be 25 too. Okay, no, it's fine, but where is tea served? Downstairs, ne? Yes, Sis Luto? Who knows where tea is? It's also downstairs. You can't allow me to make an announcement of a non-existent tea. No, that's fine. Can we ask everyone who's still outside, colleagues, where are our ushers? Those colleagues who are still outside, can we ask them to come? We want to resume. The head of department was on her way. I'm not sure how far she is now, together with DDG Jwagadi. Sobavalela sibafuna pha phakathi. Ewe. Colleagues, time is not on our side. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming back. Let alone that we have not done very well in terms of keeping our break time. We have lost quite some time. However, we still want to make sure that we shall make it up, because what's going to happen now, the time is 12 o'clock. There are 3 items that we need to dispense with between now and the time we break for lunch. The first one, we shall allow the Honorable MEC to address the summit, after which we shall then be inviting the panelists, as reflected on our programs, to come up and actually lead us on the various issues that the moderators will be leading us with. And without any further ado, Madlamini, if you can just ask Mrs. Mkijima, all the colleagues there, together with yourself, to come inside. Dr. Stofile, awunawumela phandle emgidini wakho mfundini. Just as we are welcoming all the leaders, can I, at this stage, ladies and gentlemen, respectfully ask the Honorable MEC to come and address the summit. Honorable MEC? Can we, yes. Thank you so much, Honorable MEC. Thank you.
Thank you, DDG and the program director for the day. Let me take this opportunity to greet you and greet all the invitees from the partnerships that we have as government, but also from the sectors that has been invited here, just to share some experiences and also some school of thoughts, so as to inform the way forward as a province and also as a nation in general. Sector departments that have been invited, your Gauteng, Limpopo, and other formations that are there in the form of the social partners, other provincial government that has been invited, HOD, DDGs, the business sector. Colleagues, we might not be aware because we are not aware, but we will have to be aware. The current discussion that is suppose DDGs to be at the center of the agenda here, which I welcome, and also I take my hat off for the organizers and those that have been at the helm of ensuring that they have made us to get out of the comfort zones so that we can think outside of the box as part of ensuring that we contribute to the nation building assignment that we have already been schooled and also adopted as a nation. I just have few comments, DDG Mchita, before I just run through. I will send the presentation and my thoughts on the discussion itself so that we can have some benchmarks. One of the issues, Chair, that I think the nation must be seized with, and unfortunately the nation must answer. As a sector, DDG Jwagati, can we resolve one question amongst the many we have? Are we for a learning outcome or are we for an educational outcome? From a strategic point of view of the sector, are we for learning outcomes or are we for educational outcomes? Because if we don't resolve DBE, that question, we will convene as many summits as possible and we will forever be found wanting. It may look very light, but it's a daunting question that the nation must answer. Is DBE and higher education its mandate, learning outcomes or educational outcomes? I'm raising this because I have been having a serious engagement with the office on how to grill every input in the sector that is dovetailed from a strategic shared vision of the nation. Any contribution, any input that is made by either education as a sector or other sector departments, how do you then draw such inputs into the strategic shared vision and mirror that contribution? What is this strategic shared vision that I'm talking about? The nation has agreed, Program Director, on the NDP. And the nation has agreed that by 2030, we must then have resolved the unresolved questions. So, in essence, it means the nation has got a compass by which any development of any sector in the country must be benchmarked against, which is the NDP. And I'm then saying, having not answered that first question, we won't be able to say how then relevant our contribution in the NDP and be able to influence other sector departments from a strategic point of view. Because we are a skills center, a skills production center as basic education. We fail to think strategically here. They must just pack their bags and go home, all of them. Because whatever that they plan, think about, entirely as government, depends on the school of thought of basic education and higher education ultimately. Because the skills production, the level of intellect, and the ability of the state to resolve problems depends on the theater of ideas, which has been a lecture room or a classroom. And I'm then saying, that's why I'm lifting up TPE, this question, for us to look into how best do we coordinate ourselves in the broader strategy that has been lifted here for us to be able to resolve some of the problems that are there. I've been listening very carefully on the presentations that have been made here by almost the three presenters, in particular DDG Jwagati and also the DDG from Gauteng province. Do you know what your presentations are saying? They are saying the DDGs for corporate services must either overhaul the ecosystem of contractual management in this department and answer one or two questions. Why do we have this contract? What this contract means in the context of the strategy that has been put in place. What is it that we have from a contractual management point of view? What is it that we don't have? And how do we resolve that question? Because if we don't do that, DDG Mkhitar, you run a risk of contracts that do not talk to the strategy. And once that happens, it means you run a risk of a state or government going to court on contracts, by the way, that have got nothing to do with the business that you have said you are married to. So I'm saying the broader strategy, the content, the thrust of the discussion here goes beyond the curriculum management and goes beyond the ICT management, goes beyond the e-learning solutions that are there. And I'm happy that DDG Jwagati has lifted it up, that you need a package than just tools, so that you are able to see how best do we migrate swiftly in terms of the work that must be done, colleagues. Let me leave you there, but I think it's a discussion that probably needed all of us to give space, time to engage each other for the better appreciation of the environment that we are. Outside there, I had a informal discussion with someone and I was saying, here in the Department of Education, you learn each and every minute. Every day there is something new that you learn here. I was arguing with him outside and say, Director Curriculum, the Eastern Cape has been an automotive hub of the country for almost 80 to 100 years now. But what we can not all of us as a nation answer is whether there is any appreciation of a seamless content of that within the levers of government, from basic education to higher education, and also from the key heights of the economy that you have in the country. And I'm then saying, you can't leave that question here not answered. Because Mercedes-Benz wenza imoto ngapha ngaphesheya, kodwa la moto uze ikwazi uthengiswa funeka iqale eJamani iyofumana iyokwenzelwa utsiki eJamani ibuye ke ngokuzothengiswa apha. Then there is a problem from an orientations point of view. Because in essence it means there is no scientific relationship between the production of those skills that are required and also the beneficiation of those that are producing the very same property that we are talking about. And therefore, ultimately, it will yield a fundamental question of an export-dependent economy. Xa bexabana phaa kula mazwe wabo, sityiwe indlala apha. Why? Because you have got an economy that is predominantly export-dependent. And I'm then saying, that's why the question that I raised earlier on, that can we clarify ourselves on this issue? If the president, for example, is arguing that the priority yakhe umongameli currently fundamentally is ntathu, is joblessness, creating of jobs. How do you dovetail the strategy of the sector to that priority? And how do you deal with that question as a sector? Because an education outcome that does not have an appreciation of the broader agenda beyond the classroom has got a problem. Has got a problem, because hence I'm saying you'd have to find a way on how to deal with this issue. If we talk digital education, colleagues, last year we introduced the smart classes, one of the schools in Richard Facher, yes, in Timbas. As I was listening here from the presenters, have we been able to carry everybody in the country or in the province along with a hand? Because the success of the Gauteng leadership is because they mastered the art and skill of doing so. They carried everybody there, and hence you didn't have hiccups on the concept. Because once you talk innovation, it means you are then talking a rupture. And once you talk a rupture, it means you are unsettling the establishment. And once you unsettle the establishment, it means you are prepared to be enemies of some within the house. That's what it means. Because you are then requiring a business unusual, which then is a bit of uncomfort to those that are used traditionally to some of the elements that have been put in place. We are a province that have got a backlog on infrastructure. If then the smart classes in Richard Vacha undermines the business of building schools, then we have a choice to make. Because ngapha uba sibathatha abantu sihambe nabo bazathi makwakhiwe esisikolo sifuna workshops apha zoqhaqho lemoto ze mechanics. ndibe mna ngapha ndisithi hayi nansi i-ICT infrastructure yoqhaqha izimoto zakho awuzinidi zonke ezi workshops ziyi-2011 uzifunayo unida nje only 3 workshops with high volumes of ICT and e-learning solutions that has got capacity of assembling and disassembling cars from a technological point of view. Now, hence I'm then saying, such kind of decisions are decisions that cannot be taken by people who fears not to take decisions. Because those that are in the construction industry are going to fight with you on the basis that they benefit out of a brick and mortar construction. Now you are migrating workshops into digital learning process. And I'm then saying it's a matter that all of us must be able to look into. I think I agree with the presenters that for us to succeed, colleagues, let's make sure that we do all tricks in the book to respond to the Millennium Goals. But how do we do that? Requires an advanced oiled machinery of the state organs. Dithethe lento Didi Jim Kid. Ubana ngabe uhulumente okay abane problem yongabi na network ngenxa kaSitha. Kuthiwe i-system is down. What is the meaning of that? Hayi sengicela nje uhulumente ke ngoku. Abantu bafuna inkonzo apha phandle xa bengena apha endlini kuthiwa no i-system zethu are not working today. SITA is down. And there is nothing wrong about SITA underperforming such that government is not relevant to the people that have elected it. What I'm saying here is that you need to whip all entities internal in government and outside of government that makes the public service good looking to the people that it serves. To the people that it serves. Because people will continue having something to say about outsourcing of services. Once you allow a situation where a culture of underperformance, where there is an entity of government, becomes a norm. I might be irritative about this, but I'm saying it's something that we must engage on. Uba sibophelelana kwi-contract, we understand the meaning of the contract sibophelelana kuyo sobabini. Because I spend him that must explain you, and when you are not ready to explain yourself to me. We must explain, both of us, what is the meaning of this. Because both of us, we are at the service of the people. The common agenda is about servicing the people that are there, which requires the service from government. But my argument is that, colleagues, when you have got a shared strategic vision embraced by all sectors of the society and a nation, you won't go wrong. One of the weaknesses of the governance we have in general as a nation, Mamukota, we are concept throwers. We don't give ourselves space and time to dovetail. What is the meaning of this concept? That's why uzofumbuka asixoxa izinto that should have been resolved in 1999. We're still busy discussing them now. It's not because there have not been ideas coming forth at that time, but precisely because nomkhwaba udla ngokuthi kupremier xa icacisa lento ocofa bayishiye uyiqala uyishiye uphinde uyoqalenye uqale naleyo uphinde uyishiye without completing it uphinde uyoqalenye. We've got that weakness. We've got that weakness. If you look in terms of the overarching policies of the country in general, we are far ahead than any nation in this world. You look at the African Review, President Mbeki presented, where is it now? We are looking at the African Renaissance, President Mbeki presented, where is it now? You are looking at a number of policy formulations that have been there for almost 15 to 20 years back. Where are they now? So I'm saying we need to master the art and skill of operationalizing the ideas that we are in agreement on. Makube kumahluko xa sivumelana naxa singavumelani. Ingxaki ngokuseke kufananwe ngokuJuda. Should be here. Because the movement of what you are talking about